Hello, hello, hello. Hi, everyone. Hello. Thank you so much for joining me on this evening or this afternoon, regardless of when you're watching. Thank you for making the time to join me for the next 15 to 20 minutes. For those of you who do not know who I am, my name is Lepore Lindsay, and I go live every Sunday at 5:30 p.m. Central, and we discuss different professional development topics that focus on how to bring your value to the workplace. So we're not talking about self worth, as in that's something that everyone has value, right? Everyone has the ability to make an impact at work. That's part of it. But the part that we discuss every week is how to communicate and how to translate your skills, your abilities, your insights, your wisdom into something that those on your team, your department, or organization also find to be beneficial and helpful to meeting that end goal. So last week um, we spoke about speaking up and speaking out, and we had some really great questions, some really great discussions on how to do that. And so this week we're going to continue with that conversation, but we're going to spend a little bit more attention on what we choose not to say or the silence aspect. So as you're tuning in, please be sure to let me know where you are tuning in from. This system is really weird where I can't really see you, but I sometimes I know people are there. Sometimes I really don't know if anyone is there or not on what platforms because I'm streaming to YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So if you're there, let me know that you're there. I would love to say hello, to know where you're tuning in from, and even if you're catching the replay, let me know. And if you have any questions or you want to continue the conversation, let us continue the conversation. So thanks again for watching. All right, y'all. But we only got 15 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So, the strategy of silence when speaking up, the strategy of silence when speaking up. We talked about last week the strategy of speaking up and speaking out and how essential and important it is, and how your voice or the delivery or even how you feel after you speak up, it doesn't have to be perfect. I know we expect it to be perfect. We want it to be perfect, but that's not going to always happen. And the other part of that, or the twist, if you will, is that sometimes speaking up looks like silence. Hi, thank you for joining, Annette. Happy to have you join again. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. If anybody else is there, you let me know. And if you don't want to let me know, that's okay too. Y'all are so quiet, but it's okay. So when it comes to speaking up, right? Silence can also be a piece of that. And a lot of times we look at silence as being weakness or avoidance. And in some cases it can be, but one of the things you'll notice is that I mentioned this is about the strategy of silence. And I know, y'all, we are in an age where we are inundated with so much information, so much data, and so many strategies and tips to consider. So, what do we even decide, or how do we even decide what we are going to use next, what strategy we're going to use next? And so I don't want you to think about silence as being, "Oh, okay, here we go. Here's but another strategy that we have to think about in professional development." This is something that is already tied to communication. This is something that is already tied to active listening. This is something that is already a part. I can guarantee you it's already a part of your toolbox, but it's just one of those tools. I don't know if anybody has ever had to put anything together and you see that one tool that's there and you're just like, what is this? How is this going to come into play? Like, how is this even useful? That's the tool that thing that you don't want to throw away because you don't know when you'll need it. And that's what silence is. We are in an age where speaking up and speaking out is glorified, and there's nothing wrong with it being glorified. We are in an age where we also forget that where we don't forget, but we often share our ideas, and people want to know about our lives and they want to know about the tips. And we have so much easy access to information and communication that to not do that feels almost out of place. It feels almost like we are avoiding the topic. And so when I say strategic, this isn't about adding anything additional, but what this is about is just being very intentional about how we use it. It's about being intentional, about being purposeful, about making space for the silence. Got to make space for the silence, right? Um, in contrast, when we aren't intentional about it, and I'm going to share really briefly 3 R's that the University of Maryland kind of shared when it comes to strategy and silence. But first, let's talk about when it's not intentional. When silence isn't intentional, but we still use it, it can come off as fear, it can come off as uncertainty or avoidance. And this may not be something that's intentional, but when we aren't quite sure what we need to say, and we're not even thinking about it, we're not even processing it, we're just being silent. But this is not what this is about today. This is about being very intentional. And there are 3 factors that the University of Maryland shared when they conducted research that demonstrates how we can use silence effectively. So, one of the first ways that we can use it effectively, actually, we can use it effectively is with relevance. And with relevance, we have to ask ourselves, is this the right topic? Is this the right topic? Is what I am about to say, is it connected to the current goal? Is it connected to the current situation? You remember in some previous live streams, I discussed performative versus performant. And essentially, what this is performative, or if you want to call it performative theatrics. This is something that happens oftentimes in the workplace where actions are being taken, but it's not necessarily towards any particular outcome or goal. It looks good. You know, the emails that get sent and they don't really mean anything. It's just someone sending an email so they can send an email, or someone holding a meeting and nothing gets accomplished at that meeting, or someone speaking up at a meeting, but it's just like, what are you to be seen, right? That's that performative side. That performant side are the actions that we take that lean towards or contribute to the goal, the final goal, or what that final outcome might be. Oh, let's see here. Tough as silence can make people feel uncomfortable. What Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It is really tough to um I wish my thing's a little slow when it comes to showing me chats. But yes, it can be tough to use silence, especially because when we're talking about in the corporate world where it is expected for responses to be very quick. It is expected for responses to be um fast pace. That can make that can make things very difficult to not be silent. And actually, there was a couple of years ago, there was a workshop that I was facilitating, and it was that very question. It's what do we do when people are just wanting answers? And I think a part of that, going back to the relevance piece, is this a topic that needs to be shared? Is that relevance piece is saying, how can I share this in a way that would be helpful? Or how can I use silence in a way that would be helpful? Right. And even communicating that piece, which is something that I've done in the past. I've just said, I this is my idea now, but I really would like the opportunity to think on it a little bit further and to develop my response to give a more well thought out response. Because while a lot of decisions do need to be made quickly, not every decision needs to be made quickly. And a part of that and taking ownership of the silence on ourself is communicating that with other people that we need time before we give a full thought out answer. And on the management aspect of that is honoring that some people do process information a little bit slower. I 100% process. It takes me time to process things, and sometimes I can make a quick decision, but sometimes I'm like, "Ooh, yeah, let me get back to you on that one." Like, we'll circle back, right? Like, get back to you when I have some time to think about it. And so that's that first R. That first R is the the relevance piece. Um and understanding that that silence, even utilizing that silence, that can also build your credibility. Because we know that saying something yes can build credibility, but even silence can build credibility because now you are in a position where we're not just looking at silence as being passive, but we're looking at it as power because we know that this person is typically someone that's really quiet, but when they speak, they are saying something that we know will be beneficial. And now you start to create that reputation of being someone who has that insight. So that first R is relevance. And the second R is readiness. And when we talk about, excuse me, readiness, we are talking about, is this the right time? And we're talking about silence. So is this the right time to be silent? Another question to ask is, do I have enough information or enough emotional control to speak clearly? So, do I have enough information or emotional control to speak clearly in this moment? Um, and giving ourselves that opportunity to just think and process that situation. And if we're feeling like, right now I'm not in a position to speak, then don't. We can use silence as an opportunity of reflection because not all silence is just about others and getting them to lean in and to listen, but sometimes it's about doing a check-in with ourselves, and we need that additional time which creates that uncomfortable silence that was mentioned earlier to process correctly. The other piece about the readiness is that protection piece. um Silence allows us to keep our energy. I was recently confronted by someone who didn't like the way that I shared some information. And we had a conversation and we went, back and forth with it a little bit, and then I get this long text message afterwards about everything else. And there were so many things, y'all. There were so many things I could have said that I wanted to say, but it kind of went into this additional question of, is this going to help? If I say anything, is this going to make this person change their mind? What am I even trying to say? And so I realized that the person wasn't going to change their mind. I realized that there was nothing that I could say that I felt like saying at that time. I didn't feel like continuing going back and forth. And so I chose silence in that moment. So the first R is relevance. The second R is readiness, and then the third R is responsiveness. And responsiveness is about, is this the right audience? Is this the right audience? Using your silence to to determine if that person will receive that message, taking that time to process completely. Again, these are the three questions that the research was conducted with the University of Maryland, and they found these to be really useful for employees at all levels, and especially those who would consider themselves to be high performers. Asking these three questions and using silence strategically. And remember, I'm not about trying to add an additional tool that's overwhelming in the toolbox because I know we already got a lot of professional development tools, but just consider this an upgrade of communication, of something that we already have. As we're getting ready to wrap up here, I want you to think about silence a resource like when you're speaking up, a resource when you have to choose what is best. Are you speaking up? Are you speaking out? Are you speaking loudly? Or maybe you're making that determination to use silence loudly. You know, so today we've kind of explored silence not as a matter of absence, but as a strategic choice. So we have the opportunity to either choose to speak or to choose to be silent. And the silent isn't a representative of weakness. It is a representative of being intentional. It is a representative of making the choice to be relevant, making the choice to be ready, in making the choice to be responsive in a way that builds credibility and adds layers to your message. When we think about leadership, leadership at all levels, it isn't just about um, the words that we share, but it's about the moments that we make things and that we take to be intentionally still. So, strategic stillness, strategic silence, not as a matter of weakness. So, what I want you to think about this week is what is the most powerful thing, or what if the most powerful thing that you do this week is to use the pause, is to use the silence, not in the sentence that you speak, but in the silence that you hold, or the stillness that you afford the opportunity. All right, y'all. I I want to thank you all so much for tuning in this week. Next week, actually, I'll have a guest that's joining me. LeVar Thomas will be joining me. We're going to be talking a little bit about global leadership and how that can happen at all levels, and some things that you can look towards doing before even stepping into that official leadership role. What are some steps that you can take? As you're watching this, be sure to send me a message, send me a replay. I always appreciate you watching and participating and sending me messages. Thank you all so very much for your time. We're at our time for today, but I'll be back next week. And remember, strategic stillness, just embrace the pause. All right. Have a good one, y'all. Bye.